let's welcome our speakers today. Marc Cheatham, known everywhere as Cheats, is the founder of the Cheats Movement blog, the intersection of hip hop culture and community activity. As a freelance writer and an artist in his own right, photographer, Marc has interviewed some of the most prominent figures in hip hop culture, activism, business, and politics. Marc is a graduate of Virginia Commonwealth University with a degree in social work. And a welcome to Noah Scalin. He was our first Creative Mornings speaker, so welcome back. He is an artist, innovation consultant, and creator of the Webby award-winning project Skull a Day. Many of you do his yearly creative sprint, and you keep us creative year-round, Noah, so we really appreciate that. You help us flex our creative muscles. So without any further intro, we're going to turn this over to you. Please welcome Cheats and Noah to the stage.
Thanks so much, y'all. It was a real honor to be back. And just going to share my screen here, do a little preparatory work so I can see y'all as well. Let's see, we'll be able to see your comments too. All right. Wow, what a great start. So much awesome information already shared. And it is truly an honor to be back and to share on this theme, and for Richmond to have been chosen and to choose this specific theme feels just amazing. I'm gonna kick us off. This is a collaborative conversation, but I'm gonna give a little prehistory, and then Cheats is gonna really join in on this after I tell you a little bit about this image. So this image that you're seeing now might be familiar to some of you. In fact, I see some folks wearing this shirt right now. And if you're not from Richmond, maybe you don't know what this image is or what the significance of it. But I'm going to tell you where it came from. And it was something that I created a few years back. But the origin of this image is a little bit further back. The Lee Monument statue was put up in Richmond in 1890. And I grew up in Richmond, born and raised here. And quite literally spent my time in the shadow of this monument, played at the base of it like a lot of people did, and just sort of didn't question its existence. I think I always assumed it was a war memorial of some sort, maybe something you put up right after war to memorialize the dead. So, you know, not pleasant, but kind of assumed it had a specific purpose. We used to joke when I was a kid that Monument Avenue was the street of second place trophies. And that's how we kind of thought about this bizarre world we lived in, where we had the losers of the Civil War celebrated. But then I went to an amazing talk, actually, in 2015. That was a Creative Mornings talk. And it was actually Bill Martin, the director of the Valentine Museum, showed images like this and told us about the history and said, you know, when this monument was put up, that was 25 years after the end of the Civil War. So it actually was a completely different purpose. It wasn't about memorializing the dead, but it was about promoting and preserving this concept of the lost cause, and presenting an altered version of history, and also solidifying white power in the city and showing Black people that even though the Civil War had been, that they had lost the Civil War, that they still regained power in the South. So I'm not a historian, and again, I grew up in Richmond and I didn't learn this history, and so it was a real important shock to my system to say, wait a minute, these monuments weren't what I thought they were. Not that I liked them to begin with, but wow, we're just leaving these up here. It was really intense to discover. And you can see there's a picture of when it was unveiled and all the people that were there 25 years after the Civil War. And so I didn't know what to do about it, though. I'm just a person, individual. But then a couple years later in 2017, I saw this happen. This was in New Orleans. This is during the when the Black Lives Matter movement really started to take hold, and people said, wait a minute, these symbols, they got to go. They've been here far too long, shouldn't have been here to begin with. But they actually started dismantling monuments, in this case in New Orleans, and this was a Robert E. Lee monument there. And I saw this image and was like, whoa, this is possible. I just didn't think it was possible. And I saw this empty base and was like, that's powerful. And so that image that you see is me responding to that and saying, what if we pictured that? Because when I talked to people in Richmond about these monuments, they felt like they could never go away. They felt permanent. You know, that's the thing about monumental things. And they felt like, well, even people didn't like them, but they're pretty, they're art, they're historical. You know, a lot of people come to Richmond to look at these things. And I was like, wow, people can't visualize getting rid of them. And so I wanted to make a picture that showed what it looked like, because maybe it would feel possible if you could see it. And my background is as a graphic designer as well as an artist. And so I wanted to make an image. And so this is the image I made. But the other thing, if you know your recent history in 2017, is that the Unite the Right rally happened in Charlottesville. And there's some terrible violence that occurred. And I felt very scared at that time to talk about this thing, to share this image. I made this, but then I was afraid to put it out there publicly because I didn't know if I'd get attacked, and I'm not that brave. And so I made stickers of it and gave them out secretly. And then a friend of mine, Thea, who runs World of Mirth, said, people are dying to have these stickers. Would you let us sell them? And I said, okay, can you do it anonymously? And I'll give you a bunch, and just donate the money to a charity. We picked Girls for Change. And so those stickers went out, and she went through the first batch so fast, she ordered more. And she said, people really, really want these. I said, this is incredible. And I carried around a printout of this, and I kept showing it to people, saying, I don't know what to do with this image, but I want something to happen with it. It feels like something, people clearly are responding to this. And luckily, I had some great conversations with my friend Cheats, who I'm going to now invite into this conversation because it's been a monologue here for a moment.
No, it's fine. It's good. I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, but I Cheats wanted to have a conversation about this stuff for his podcast, and I guess you can take over here and we can continue the conversation.
Yeah, no. So that image, the picture that you're seeing now, is a picture of a podcast that I did called The Table. And at the time, I was gathering a bunch of friends, and I thought really community-involved folks to sit around a table. And I needed the table to be diverse, not just racially, but diverse in thought. I needed the table to have experts, so it wasn't just a bunch of people not knowing their history. So if you look around this particular table, it's really awesome. You'll see Noah there. You'll see Bill Martin sitting beside me, who, as Noah previously mentioned, is the director of the Valentine Museum. The back that you're seeing is Dr. Julian Hayter, who was featured in the 60-minute piece about monument removal. It's just a fantastic group. On the other side is Dr. Tanya Pettifer-Waits. The photo is taken by someone that's in the room. So shout out my really good friend, Riza Gomez, who I know is a part of Creative Mornings as well, or obviously a longtime advocate of the organization. But what we were doing was we had conversations about all different types of topics that we thought were kind of centerpieces and fundamental to Richmond. And the monument discussion that we had in 2017 was one that really stuck with me and stuck with, I think, the group that was there, and resonated as a podcast throughout the city. So the interesting that what Noah brought up, and I thought it was interesting to me, especially and timely, given the discussions we're having around education. I grew up in Richmond my entire life as well. And the history that was taught to me, the American history that was taught to me about the Civil War and why we had so many kind of statues and references to the Confederacy, was never really accurately articulated. So it always, I listen to the discussions that we have now about how we're how we're going to teach history to the next generation, and the discussions of, accurate telling history and suppression. And I just remember, and I don't know if anybody else has had this experience, but as soon as I graduated high school and left Richmond, there was Martin Luther King, the national holiday. I remember going out of state for the first time ever and being surrounded by folks that were really diverse. And I remember calling it Lee Jackson King Day.
Oh my God.
And everyone looked at me like I had three heads. They were like, what are you talking about, Lee Jackson King Day? And I was like, yeah, Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee, and Martin Luther King. They're like, who does that? That's insane. That's crazy. So after the discussion that we had around the table, and Noah presented the image, I think we sat probably in City Diner in Richmond maybe a week later, maybe even a week before, I can't remember. But it was something that the image resonated particularly with me for so many different reasons. And one in particular was as a blogger that focuses a lot on hip hop culture, especially as the Cheats Movement blog focused on community hip hop and activism, I thought this image was extremely hip hop. And I thought this image was something that a Public Enemy would take back in the day and really expand upon and make it a symbol for some of the more advocate hip hop and hip hop culture and hip hop images. And that's a lot of what our blog was about at the time, was really kind of pushing the envelope forward. And I thought this image did it well. So we kind of took it and ran with it. Should I stop there and you should keep going?
No, keep it going. I mean, because just to build on what you're saying, I was so grateful when you came back to me, because after that conversation for the podcast, I felt a little disheartened. I think I was the only person in the room was like, take them down. Everyone was like, well, let's maybe put some signs up. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize this was not a popular point of view. I mean, I did know it wasn't, but it was interesting to see even progressive people were not advocating at that time. It felt like for it. It felt impossible. And I think even as we began this conversation, we didn't create this image to take down the monuments. That wasn't our goal. The goal was to create a conversation about why they were there and what we needed to talk about and prioritize in our community. Right? Yeah,
there was a lot of conversation around contextualizing. Right. At the time, especially in the city, I think it was maybe even a year before, Mayor Stoney had set up a commission to contextualize the monuments. But here's the thing: in that discussion, removal was never on the table. And then, as you mentioned, Noah, you've so eloquently, Charlottesville happened, and the Unite the Right rally happened. And after that was the only time, and the first time after the tragic passing of Heather Heyer, that the administration came back and said removal's on the table, because we can't have what happened in Charlottesville happen all across Richmond. And the interesting thing, once there was something that you mentioned that made me realize that removal was possible, and believe it or not, it was something that was the opposite scale of that. It was back in the 80s when they put up the Arthur Ashe statue. And it took me a while to get to this full circle realization. But if anybody was here during the Arthur Ashe on Monument Avenue, Arthur Ashe statue on Monument Avenue debate, it was a big deal. And white supremacists came from all over. David Duke led a rally in Richmond to stop Arthur Ashe from being on Monument Avenue. And what I remember happening was thinking, this is going to be awful. Arthur Ashe will never survive this. the street will never survive. And what happened was the monument went up, people went about their business, and the sun rose in the east. And I mean, it was one of those things where when I see those types of things, and because we can't fathom them and can't imagine them, we also often think that they're impossible. But what I found out is there's a lot of resiliency. So even today, there was, less than 2 years ago, Monument Avenue would have never survived without Confederate monuments and property values and all kinds of craziness that we were hearing, or even Arthur Ashe Boulevard. The boulevard would never survive if you changed the name to Arthur Ashe Boulevard. How are people going to get their mail? These are the discussions that people were having. And what I found out is that people adjust to change. And if you're changing for, I think, values that are important to an entire community, it's extremely important to act on those changes. And yeah.
Let's jump into what happened. So you pitched this idea of the collaborative clothing line, basically, and was like, let's put our names on them. Mind you, I had been anonymous and freaked out, and you're like, we're gonna put this out there with our names on them.
That was really funny. That conversation that we had was really funny, because when you showed me the image, I was instantly like, let's do this. Let's go. Let's run. Let's do all of these great ideas. And you were still very hesitant of being public about it. And I actually, probably through being naive, didn't fully understand it. I was just like, what are you talking about? This is awesome. Let's go. We've been looking for this for a very long time. And I will tell you, which is comical now, the sweatshirts that you see are we only had one run of sweatshirts, and we didn't think we would sell any of them. So we made, I think we made 40. Like 40.
Gosh.
That's it.
Yeah.
And we made 40 sweatshirts, and I think they sold out in 10 minutes or less. They were like less than 5 minutes, and we never made another run because we were just, and we went to the wonderful people at Triple Stamp Press, and we told Triple Stamp, we're like, yeah, we're just gonna make 40 of these, and they were like, they laughed at me. They're like, you'll be back, and we're like, nah, we don't know how it's gonna go. And so after we made 40 and sold out in less than 5 minutes, then we realized that we had something that I think we all knew, but we had something that people galvanized around, and we were able to do. I think the next thing we did was a t-shirt, just like that. We did a t-shirt run that Lucy Dacus is wearing on the cover of Richmond magazine. And then it just went from there in regards to new legacy products. I think we had to backfill. We had the story and the reason why we wanted to do it. But I think we did have to backfill, Noah and I had to backfill some of our messaging around why we did it after it became popular in the community. And one of the things that we were really mindful of is that activism is something that we both take very seriously. And it was something where we didn't want to perceive to be profiting personally off of activism. So we immediately set up donations that I think Richmond Peace Education Center was the first donation outside of the donations that World of Mirth made. And then Community 50/50 and the last run, Nerd Squad, Conciliation Project. We were able to write some pretty significant grants for organizations during a downtime. And we're really pleased with that. And we're really pleased that we, I would say, did not allow the product and the image and the messaging to lose its identity. A lot of folks, I see folks in the comments saying that they want more runs in different shirts and different products. And the interesting thing that we always said about that was the more widespread an image gets, the less control you have over what the messaging is going to be. And we never wanted this messaging to be hijacked. It was very important for us that this message led to conversations. It led to discussions. It felt a lot of folks knew exactly what it meant, and a lot of folks just thought it was a really cool image, and they asked us about it. And when they asked us about it, we were able to tell the story of why the image was important in Richmond and why we really wanted to see a future without Confederate monuments in the city, and be able to re-educate and educate our children, Noah and our both parents, on a more accurate and better way forward. So that's one of the reasons why we had such limited runs at the time. Don't get me wrong, we sold a lot and we donated a lot, but we definitely wanted to make sure that it didn't get, the messaging didn't get hijacked. And I think we're really pleased with the result of how it's been able to take on a life, spread some messaging, and kind of keep that original spirit of activism and really, I think, active thought, and I think hip hop. I always think hip hop in there.
It got named like the most hip hop moment, I think, of the year by, it might have been Style at that point. There was like an article about it.
Yeah, I thought it was great.
And you know, so this is all in 2017. We're talking about that first run of hoodies and shirts and even the mugs. And then, you know, this was one of the real crazy points of it, was that to then be asked by the Valentine Museum to include the shirt in their collection when they did an exhibition about monuments. And so it felt very full circle in terms of learning about this, for me at least, from Bill Martin, and then having it end up back in the museum. But that was in 2017, and that project sort of ran its course. And we moved on to other projects and did other things. And then, of course, 2020 happened. And I mean, there's so much to unpack about 2020, but obviously, I don't think anyone expected the monument, that Lee monument and that base, to become so important, to literally be called like one of the most important piece of political art in the 21st century by, was it the New York Times, I think said that about it. I mean, like, these projections on that were created, that made it into artwork, the community that was formed around it, the graffiti, like everything about it was just unbelievable. And again, if you weren't here or you're not familiar with their community, transformative, right? To see a monument that seems so impossible to assail be covered in graffiti and become a community space, a vibrant, active place in 2020 was just phenomenal. And of course, inevitably, there was calls for us to revisit our project, because folks from 2017 were remembering that and saying, look what's happening. And Cheats and I had to talk about, do we go back to this? What do we do?
Yeah, we had a real discussion around obviously 2020, and do we relaunch the new just re-release, if you will, the new legacy shirts during this time. And so it's actually really important to note that we made the decision to relaunch, I think for like 72 hours, a black shirt, a new shirt. We relaunched before the monuments were removed. It was during the protest, but it was actually before the Lee Monument was removed. And I think that's really important for us, because we were asked if we would release after it was announced that it was coming down. And again, back to that messaging and not having messages be corrupt. And it was really activism, right? So if it's activism, we're actually pushing for change, significant change. After they've announced that it's going and it's going to be taken down, we felt like it was almost like a victory lap for that was a little bit different than the folks that had the courage, or if you will, to support the project and wear the gear. And one of the things that I always thought was really important, and I always say this, is that different people express their activism in different ways. And a lot of people aren't extremely vocal, or even during 2020, you got to think we're going through a global pandemic. Not everybody can go rally in public. I had small children. I couldn't. Noah couldn't as well. And so one of the things that we really thought was important was giving folks that might not be comfortable going to a particular rally, giving them the opportunity to support in their own way, whether it was a sticker, whether it was a shirt, whether it was a coffee mug. It was their form of activism. And I think it was really, I think it's powerful. And so we did re-release in 2020 prior to the announcement that the Lee Monument was going to be removed. And the response that we had was pretty amazing. In that slide, you see, Councilman Jones and Mayor Stoney. Like you said, you saw Lucy Dacus. We were mailing. This is also a mom and pop operation. So we were mailing shirts and all kinds of things overseas. We're losing money on shipping. We're not smart business folks.
Please give all the credit to Cheats, because he did that. He was physically sending these out. The response was overwhelming, and we were so pleased. And I don't know. I think that's it. What else? No. Yeah. Somebody was asking about the yard signs, and that was just another part of it. As we were being very selective. The stickers, the original
yard signs
run
were
of
Studio
stickers.
23, right?
Yeah, Studio 23 did yard signs. So we
23.
gave them permission to do a run of those, and again, limited run, disappeared super fast. Some people, especially folks that lived in the fan, my parents included, have these historical house signs, and they have the Lee Monument on them. And once people thought about what was on these signs, they're like, we don't want these. So people used the stickers to cover them up. And so I re-released the sticker with a hologram version to sort of update for 2020. And that same thing happened, it was just given to World of Mirth to sell and take the money to give to charity. So continued it that way in a variety of ways. But yeah, to Cheats' point, I think the image allowed people to see each other in a way that you could sort of identify people, right? Because I would see the sticker on a car, or I'd see it on a house, or I'd see the sign. And it just was I think it allows you to see the numbers, right? Because we didn't know the numbers when we made the sweatshirts, to Cheats' point. And so to know, like, oh, we're not in the minority here. This isn't actually a minority opinion. They sold out fast. There was, this incredible response. And, and then this happened. And that was the most surreal thing, because I mean, I don't know about Cheats. I didn't think this really was going to happen in our lifetime. Certainly not before 2020. Like 2017, the conversation was like, maybe in decades, years from,
I think the conversation we had was, this is not for us. This is for our children. We didn't really think at the time my Cam's 7 now. So, he was obviously a couple years younger then, and Zen is super young as well. And it was one of those things where we didn't think we would see it probably in our lifetime, but we thought with enough pushing and enough, the right events, we could see it for our children. What did happen, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there's all of the documentaries and talk around, how the monuments were removed and that sort of thing. The monuments wouldn't have been removed if it wasn't for the advocates that were walking in the streets, that were marching in the streets.
Yeah, to be clear, we're not taking credit for the monuments coming down.
There's a lot. Well, the amazing thing is there are a lot of people that will take credit for it, right? I'm looking at all kinds of different political ads or whatever it is. It was the young people and those longtime dedicated activists that took to the streets after George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery. And they went down to City Hall and they forced people's hands to make them realize that this was an important issue. And while a lot of folks will say it's symbolic, it was a little bit more than symbolic, because it was, like Noah was saying, doing something that we didn't think was possible to do. It was really a monumental task. And I do think I'll be 100% honest with this group. And I know I have a lot of friends in here that have probably already heard me say this. We also had what would be kind of a perfect storm of events that led up to activism in the streets, right? So we have a global pandemic where the world is shut down for a significant amount of time, where a lot of people are focused on things where if they were going through their daily lives, if they were taking their children to swim class or baseball or soccer, and this wasn't presented right in front of them as something that was really important that they had time to dedicate to, there might have been a different outcome. There's a lot to be said about the previous governor and his issues with race that came up in February, but that's actually important as well. We had a governor of Virginia that got caught in a scandal that was centered around race. And he was on a mission since then to prove that he was a friend of all communities. And things like this, where a governor had never done before, says at the very least, hey, look, we're going to take this down and we're going to give the land back to the city. These are things that might not have happened if it wasn't for what happened in February 2 or 3 years ago. So there was all of these events that led up to helping with the monuments, the kind of outcome of Monument Avenue and the monuments throughout the city of Richmond and what's happening all throughout the South and the state. It was important for us to recognize that. And it's important for us to really say, and obviously the tragic events, right? The tragic events that were called attention to. But if those folks hadn't taken to the streets and really put pressure on political leadership, we might be in a different place. So yeah, I'll stop there. But
the Creative Mornings folks wanted to shift to questions and answers, and I just want to end on this image because there's now nothing on that spot. It's not even a base. And a lot of people have asked, like, well, what now? And we have to decide as a community, because as Cheat said, the ownership of the land is, well, she was talking about previously, but the ownership of the land has gone from the state to the city. And it went to the state because that was another means of controlling our ability to take down the monuments. But now we own this space. So what do we do with it? Because there is no more image to rally around in that way. And so that's where I'll leave it here. And again, thanks for having us.
Shout out breakout group number 8. We talked about it in there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. We do have some questions. I have Ann Fletcher. If you want to unmute, I'm going to go ahead and just flow into the questions here.
Sure. Hey, Noah, good to see you. And this is a great conversation. I mean, yeah, everything that you all have talked about is what, questions that I've always wondered about. And now that they're gone, we still have people who are talking about critical race theory and, trying to gin up fear about teaching the truth of American history. So how do we address this? No, we're all like-minded. We understand that the removal of these monuments was the right thing to do, but there are still people who have.
We're not all like-minded. There's a lot of people that think differently, but I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm like-minded with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I just want to hear your thoughts about, there's how do we address critical race theory, which isn't even taught in Virginia, but yet it's become this talking point.
Oh, Cheats, you just talked to the mayor. What's the?
So, all right. So, and I don't think this is an unpopular opinion. I believe that the critical race theory debate is one of the biggest, what's the word?
Misdirect?
Diversionary tactics.
Yeah.
Like a misdirect, like look that way. We're going to do that. I think it's not a big issue. This is what I would like to see. I would like to see them teach Black history better and more, and teach American history more accurately than ever have before. And I'll never forget, I had a conversation. I did a project with the VMFA. It was a kind of a Black vignette project, and we had some amazing folks come and do these really amazing vignettes with the VMFA and the Cheats movement. And I'll never forget Dr. Tanya Pettifer-Waits, who I love. She's phenomenal. Said when she was in school, she's older than me, but she's I'd say, yeah. When she was in school, they taught like Harriet Tubman, Dr. Martin Luther King, and basically the same figures that they taught her for Black history in public school, they teach to my child. They haven't expanded this. It was, it's Jackie Robinson, Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, let's go. And it's the same. So to answer the question about, they need to teach history better, American history better, Black history better. They need to expand it. And what it does is it puts it on parents like all of you, Noah, myself, to introduce our young people to a world of Black history. And there's certain things that are doing it better, but not to filibuster and belabor the point. The real issue isn't that we need to suppress what happened in America. We need to suppress what happened. The real answer is we need to teach it accurately. We need to teach it better. And we know why they don't. Once we find out more about our history, we'll have folks that don't get Thanksgiving or don't want to celebrate Thanksgiving. And those things like that are things where it's like, do we, we know the atrocities that happen, and we celebrate Thanksgiving in our house. So it's like there's all of these reckonings that folks have to deal with that they're just really not prepared to. And America would rather not talk about it or ban it than really address it. And that's a shame, but we've got to do a better job.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And I see there's a lot of questions coming through because I think there's no simple answer to it. And I think really it's about incremental work and doing the work and showing up and continuing and not giving up. And I think young people, those are the people that fueled the 2020 protests, which is awesome. They have a lot of energy, but you can burn out when you don't see the immediate results of that energy. And as you get older, it's about doing a nuanced, sort of more, thoughtful types of protests so that you can continue to sustain yourself while you do it. And so it's really about just keeping going because things are getting better. I don't really think there's any time in history you want to go back to, it really, for a variety of reasons. And so what can we continue to do incrementally is really what little sphere of influence you have. What do we have as artists? What do we have as creatives? What can we do? So it looks like there's someone with a question.
Go ahead, Jerry, if you want to.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Noah. It was a great segue to my question too. Cheats and Noah, I'm curious to hear in your conversations what ideas for the space where the Lee Monument was, what ideas you've heard for the space, and if you have any personal favorites.
Go ahead, Noah.
I haven't actually heard a lot. I mean, a few years back, there was a whole bunch of people putting proposals forward about what to do. And then in our little group before this, there was a discussion about monuments. I think ultimately monuments are like sculptural monuments are problematic if it's about people, because we're always going to recontextualize and rethink and learn new things. And so I think there's always issues around that. And I think I'm much more interested in the version of it where it's about offering people an opportunity to create and communicate and connect, which is what that space had become. And I would love to see it become that again. There can still be something large there to coalesce around, but I'd rather be a large thing around a concept than about a single individual person, which is a lot of weight to put on anybody's shoulders. And I think it just, is probably the wrong idea anyway. I think we need to stop thinking about that, single individual people, because there never was. It was always people, those people that were held up were always people who were on the shoulders of a lot of other people. And so if we can talk about community that way and art and creativity through these kind of spaces, I think that'd be much more useful for our community. But again, the visuals matter. So what do we say as a community matters? What do we make large? And for a long time, those were what was large and what mattered to our community. So it's an important conversation the community needs to have, not individually, not just an individual making a decision.
I was really enamored and really thought that the community made a choice when they named it Marcus David Peters Circle, and really had about a 4 or 5 month stretch where it was such an amazing community space, a place of community gathering. They had like gardens and they had
basketball hoops, and it was amazing.
All kinds of wonderful things. And I think that was really beautiful. I think it was really organic, and I think it was really beautiful. And I really thought the community had spoken in the sense of what that space could be. So I told our breakout group this. I go back and forth on this in the sense that I love collaborative, creative community spaces and projects. And I also go back to think like, hey, this place has been for a century has been a testament to white supremacy. Maybe we go the other way and recognize our, civil rights leaders, something that really says that this is turning the corner. So I go back and forth on what the ultimate answer should be. But I really do think a lot of the people have spoken in that wonderful kind of 5 month stretch. And there was obviously some challenges in that stretch as well, but there was the community made it a really beautiful place.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, you got a question for us or for the room?
I do. It's targeted towards you guys. But similar to the last one, the monuments going towards the Black History Museum of Virginia, I think that's just such an interesting decision. And I love the fact that group will get to decide. I'm just curious what you think would be a good repurposing of the actual monuments. Repurpose them? Do you bury them? Do you, what do you do in your mind that would make the most sense?
Take it, Cheats.
Yeah, I think Michael in our breakout group said, blow it up and take the rubble and make something new out of it. I can't remember if that was right, but no, I think that the Black History Museum and the leadership that's there is an appropriate place to decide what to do with the Confederate monuments. And this might be unpopular. I don't think that the community at large should have a real say in what to do with it, because I don't think they would be able to agree. And it's going to be like there's a handful of things in life where something comes out and no matter what you decide, I think the louder comments will be things that are of disagreement, right? So I think it's appropriate that they have the decision. I think they should take all the time that they need. If those monuments kind of fade in the conversation and fade in the background, I also think that's poetic justice as well. But whatever they decide to do with it, I just wanted to be clear and articulated accurately what they were, why they were there for so long. And if you want to see them, you can go see them, but they will never be in a public space of prominence like they were on Monument Avenue.
Yeah, not venerated. I hope they'll keep the graffiti on them because it's part of that history. And I think Cheats said it very well, which is that these monuments are part of Black history. And so to have a Black History Museum contextualize them for people appropriately, that makes the most sense. And yeah, it's not a community discussion in that point. Looks like there's
I
some more
had
questions.
one more question. I'm gonna see if I can, not sure. Oh, there you are. Go ahead if you want to ask your
Diane?
question, Diane.
You have to unmute you.
Yeah, Diane, you're on mute.
Yeah, try again.
Me.
And now you're back on.
There you go.
Oh, no,
Oh.
she was off. She was off mute. Now she's back on mute.
Give it a second.
You did it.
Okay, I'll get it. Hey, I'm wondering if either of you are on the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts committee that's leading the look into what might replace monuments or activities on Monument Avenue, and what their progress might be at this point. If you're not on, have you heard anything?
No one's asked me.
No. Yeah,
Dude.
not at all.
Dude.
If anyone's
You two are the
listening, we're
perfect
happy to
people.
just give our 2
Interesting.
cents.
Yeah, you don't want my 2 cents, but
Eh,
I'm not on it. I don't know what's going to happen with it.
yeah, it'll be
Okay,
interesting to
thanks.
see. I do hope I just hope that the community is included. I would hate to see it become a backdoor, a closed door situation.
Yeah, I mean, again, hats off. I loved hearing about where the great iconic image came from, Noah, and how it was spread, Sheets. And those signs were all over my neighborhood, and there's still a lot of them up. So people, even though those monuments are gone, there's like still behind the, let's do the right thing on Monument Avenue, which is cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for questions. I think that's it. I actually, Noah, you were our first speaker, and I have a quote from your 2015 talk, which was CM work. And the quote goes, "Make more snowballs because you never know which one of them may start the avalanche." And my question to the both of you is, I think, Noah, you mentioned that you were doing this, but it's kind of on the side and you were kind of not public about it. And then this creative collaboration and working together, you went a little bit more public. So just speaking to creative collaboration and how you both work together and how that works, and how that, for me, that's inspiring to say, when I'm not as bold, someone else can maybe help me with that. And so can you speak to that creative collaboration? And then we'll pass it off to Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that I've always felt that with collaboration, you create exponentially more than you would have otherwise, and you always make something I think you never would have made on individually. And so this project absolutely would not have existed at all were Cheats not involved, and what we created together was so amazing. And what I love is that was a moment, but we continued our friendship and our connection beyond that. And I honestly, I'm so proud of what we did next, which was with the Richmond 34 project, that with the squirrels. If you wanted to talk about it real quick, because I know we're
We've done with the Richmond 34, we did kind of an in racism patch that the Richmond Flying Squirrels last year put on their throwback Negro League uniforms. We put that patch on the Richmond Kickers, for the Richmond Kickers shirts as well. We've been able to kind of run with these types of things in public spaces and have conversations that we never would have had if it hadn't been for Noah's art, and obviously Noah's brilliance and Noah's ability. Noah is an artist to the core. And what I mean by that is he wants to do the art, and we had Hamilton Glass on as well, talking about mending walls. And I'm extremely proud of that project. But both what I've learned about artists that are really just, they would rather just do the art and then say, hey, look, the art, I'm going to go make more art. And then obviously Noah has a great relationship with his sister that does a lot of business stuff as well. But we were able to expand the project to different areas and different products, with Noah saying, hey, the art's on there. Sure, let's go. we're doing it for a good cause. Sure, let's go. And I always think that, being able to use platforms, I'm really big into media, and the fact that we had a platform through the blog that was able to get that image out in front of more people, and then even expand it once it got out a little bit, expanded a little bit more. I just thought that was the way to go and what we should do. But Noah's two things I'll say, and I know we're finishing up, but Noah Scalin is brilliant, and I gotta say that every time. He is just, for all the stuff that he's done outside of this, is just such a small part of Noah's brilliance in his career, and music and all kinds of things. And the other thing I'll quickly say is that as we move forward, there'll be a lot of conversations about moving forward and how we move forward. And some of the things, as being a Black man, some of the things that is disheartening is we're always trying to figure out how to move forward, but then it seems as if there is a responsibility or onus put on the community that was oppressed to fix the problem. And so as I look throughout this wonderful community that you have, really trying to understand what it means to be an ally, what allyship means, what listening means, and how to be an asset to the conversation is really important. But it's also really important to understand that the power structures that be, the white supremacy stuff that that we're fighting, cannot be solved by the oppressed community yelling and knocking it down. It has to come from people that also are in a position that are able to make change. So I think that's really, really important to say. And I think all of you take a responsibility, if you can, and when you're comfortable, being those allies that will help change the future.
Wow, drop that mic. Thanks, Cheats. That's beautiful. I appreciate that. Thank you both so much for joining us today for Monumental. Anne, Jerry, Michael, Diane, and Alan, we are sending you one of those wonderful New Legacy stickers that Noah and Keith talked about. Since you were there you go. Noah's got it right there, because you asked questions and we had 5 stickers and there are 5 of you. So Alan, I'm sorry we didn't get to your question, but thank you all so much for joining us for today's talk. It was definitely enlightening. I learned quite a bit. I have 2 quick things to say. First, we are hoping to be back in person with Creative Mornings outside in April, and we hope that all of you will join us. So keep your fingers crossed, and that will be our next event. We are not having an event in March at this time, so stay tuned on the Creative Mornings socials. I just had one final thought on today's theme that Cheats pretty much summed up very well. All small actions build into something monumental. When we think of that word, when we think of monumental, we think of the words like massive and big and, mammoth. But what actually makes something monumental are the small things. This community, the kind word that empowers us, the laughter that binds us, the conversations that embolden change, the actions that we all take and don't leave it to one group to take. So Cheats, point noted. Simply giving a damn is absolutely monumental. So today, as you are living your life, I hope you take a moment to reflect on the monumental impact that all of you make. You matter. The things that you create and dismantle make a difference. We will see you soon, Richmond. Thanks so much for joining us today.